Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Human Reaction. I've got my good buddy G-Cube here. G-Cube, go ahead and say hello.
Shalom, y'all.
Wonderful. So today we've got a wonderful topic. I thought of you, and only you, when I read it. It is called Magic Mushroom Psychedelics May Help Heavy Drinkers Quit. Now, you said before you have heard something about this.
Yeah, actually, in my research for artificial intelligence, I've actually researched a lot on the formation of neurons in the brain and the way they create connectomes.
Oh, wonderful. So this is something that, actually probably, or could possibly stand true.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just reading here, the compound in psychedelic mushrooms, what it says, helped heavy drinkers cut back or quit entirely in the most rigorous test of psilocybin for alcoholism. How do you pronounce that?
Oh, psilocybin?
Psilocybin, love it. It's way better than what I said. So it says more research is needed to see if the effects last and whether it works in a larger study. Many who took a dummy drug instead of, say the word?
Oh, psilocybin?
Psilocybin, thank you. Also succeeded in drinking less, likely because all study participants were highly motivated and received talk therapy. So you were saying you did yours, Chatty Cathy. You said that you were you did some studies on an artificial intelligence and whatnot. Go ahead and enlighten me on what some of the stuff you found there.
Okay, so I will start this by saying I am not a medical professional, but I have done research for, like I said, artificial intelligence. So what they found is over time, as the brain develops, the certain thought forms that people have actually create traced neural pathways in the brains called connectomes. And they found out that over time, when these become super entrenched with certain thought forms, it creates depression or alcoholism, addiction, stuff like that. And they found that whenever they've introduced psychedelics into a person's system, it helps the synapses to break out of the entrenched pathways in those connectomes. And it helps to basically break them of addictions and stuff like this.
Wonderful. Have you heard of the psilocybin, or how do you pronounce that again?
Oh, yeah. Now, I haven't had an experience on myself, but I've had a few friends that had some Vashon, in the Seattle area, Vashon Island mushrooms before. And one of my friends actually had a bad experience on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He told me about, he was out there, he took a handful of these Liberty caps, Bluebell Liberty caps from Vashon Island. And all of a sudden, he was like, yeah, I was getting a little bit too high. And I had to call my mom to come and pick me up. And he goes, I was outside standing in the, waiting for my mom. It was at midnight. And he saw this skeleton warrior climbing out of the concrete.
Oh, wow. That's something to see. I would have flipped my lid, that's for sure.
So I was at home. Of course, I was I think probably 9th, 10th grade. Mm-hmm. And I get a call. It's like, hey, man, I'm not doing too good. I was like, dude, what's going on? Yeah, I ate a bit too many mushrooms. Oh, okay.
I did shrooms once. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but when I did it, all I seen was just purple lines around everyone. I was like, yeah, this isn't even worth it. But there are different kinds I am aware of now. I was much younger then. I was like, what is this? And the one I had must have been ripped off, honestly. But it didn't even taste that good. But hey, it's okay. I always thought, does it work if you go ahead and sprinkle the shrooms on a burger or something? Will that still work the same way?
Well, I know that people make shroom tea, so that is a thing. Now, I will say this is something that people probably should be aware of. You have to be really knowledgeable when it comes to mushrooms, because there are mushrooms that look like other mushrooms that can actually kill your liver. So, and psilocybin by its nature is actually a toxin. It is kind of like a neurotoxin. The psilocybin is used to actually kill specific insects and to digest the insects. So basically, those mushrooms are actually not cannibalistic, but they are meat eaters, I guess, because they eat bugs or amoebas or whatever that get trapped inside of those little follicles, and the roots and stuff.
Oh, wow. Well, not to get too far off, let's go on back to the article. It says psilocybin found in several species of mushrooms, as we were saying, can cause hours of vivid hallucinations. Indigenous people have used it in a healing ritual, and scientists are exploring whether it can ease depression or help longtime smokers quit. It's illegal, and I will repeat, it's illegal in the U.S., though Oregon and several cities have decriminalized it. Cities? Wow, I didn't know cities could do it. But starting next year, Oregon will allow its supervised use by licensed facilitators.
It's what they call tripping balls.
So you just go to the place, sit down, and trip some balls for an hour?
Right.
Oh my goodness. I want to go to Oregon. That sounds pretty sweet now. I mean, I just have a rough day at work and just go, you know what? I think I'm going to go over to the shroom store and just sit down on a beanbag and just trip. I mean, they got to have special rooms.
Right. Yeah, when I lived in the Seattle area when I was growing up there when I was a kid, like in the 80s and the 90s, the Vashon areas where all the good stuff came from, whether it was weed or mushrooms. So if it came from there, you got some good stuff.
Well, it says the new research published Wednesday in JAMA Psychiatry is the first modern rigorous controlled trial of whether it can also help people struggling with alcohol, said Fred Barrett, a Johns Hopkins University neuroscientist who wasn't involved in the study. In the study, 93 patients took a capsule containing psilocybin or a dummy medicine, lay on the couch, their eyes covered, and listened to recorded music through headphones. They received 2 such sessions, 1 month apart, and 12 sessions of talk therapy. I can only imagine, what some of those. So those that were on the placebo, they were probably, I don't know. What do you, man? If you're on psilocybin, you gotta know you're on it. I understand the placebo effect has a large effect, but to hallucinate on the placebo,
right?
What do you think?
I think with from what I know of the way they kind of do things scientifically, I know they have control groups. So you have one group that only receives placebos, then you have another group, or you have the 2 other groups, I think, that one does receive it, one doesn't, or something like that, or they have it mixed to where the 2 groups will receive either an actual one or a placebo, and then you have the control group that's specifically just placebos to test the placebos against. And if the group that actually receives the real stuff is higher than the placebo group, then they know there's actually something curative to the actual medicine. I wish that they would also do this on peyote, because peyote also has some antiviral properties. I think 40 antiviral compounds in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, they eventually did a lot with marijuana. Maybe they'll start with the other stuff that could also help out. We have a huge article here. I thought this was much shorter, but we'll continue going on here. During the 8 months after the first dosing session, patients taking psilocybin. What is that? Psilocybin did better than the other group, drinking heavily on about 1 in 10 days on average versus about 1 in 4 days for the dummy pill group. Almost half who took psilocybin, which is probably not the way I'm supposed to pronounce it, but we're just going to continue anyways, stopped drinking entirely, compared with 24% of the control group. Well, yeah, if you drugged me, I'd probably stop drinking too. Only three conventional drugs. I'm going to mess this up. Disulfiram, naltrexone, and acamprosate. I am not. This is horrible. Can you pronounce those?
No. I don't know how.
All right. So, yeah, disulfiram, naltrexone, and acamprosate. Someone listening to this right now is going, my ears are bleeding. And no, I'm not editing this out.
They're not street pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, they're not street we probably know them as Smack Dab and Whack Whack. or something.
Grassroots
okay,
pharmaceuticals. That would be funny.
but
to actually
apparently
have a
they're
company like
approved to treat alcohol use disorder, and there's been no new drug approval in 20 years.
that. Yeah, actually,
with names like that.
Right. So, as part of the research, when I was doing the research on the AI thing and about neurons and reverse engineering the human brain, one of the things that they said is, like you were just mentioning, for the last 20 years, there's not really been any significant change when it comes to psychiatric medication, and that has to do with the detail that we know about the human brain is almost like looking at a sky view of Google Maps. We can see kind of where some of the roads go, but we don't know where those roads, intersect with stores or with, neighborhoods, or, where the divisions are in the brain. And so as part of one of the projects they have that started during the Obama administration was the IBM Blue Brain Project, where they are actively slicing cadavers' brains and mapping it into a computer, and then using artificial intelligence to actually connect the neurons together. And they're hoping that they can recreate a human brain in the computer, and then they can simulate a lot of these psychoactive drugs, or
so
drugs
they want
that they
to
use
give
for
drugs
psychosis
to robots.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Because that way they can
that's not
test it
gonna go
out. Yeah.
When
The
I get
laws of robotics.
reincarnated, I want to be reincarnated into a drug-taking robot.
You'd end up being Bender off of Futurama.
That's where we're heading. That's where we're heading. Oh my goodness. Well, it says, while it's not known exactly how psilocybin works in the brain, researchers believe it increases connections and at least temporarily changes the way the brain organizes itself. More parts of the brain are talking to more parts of the brain, said Dr. Michael Bogenschutz, director of the NYU Langone Center for Psychedelic Medicine, who led the research. Less is known about how enduring those new connections might be. In theory, combined with talk therapy, people might be able to break bad habits and adopt new attitudes more easily. So a little bit of what you were saying. Connections of the brains. It's interesting. They'll be able to be able to make a copy of a human brain and then be able to test it from there. Of course, is there a morality line there?
Well, so basically where, at least last time I checked my research, where they're at right now is IBM is currently trying to model a macaque brain, because it's similar enough to human brains that, similar DNA, I guess, being primates. And so
I'm a macaque.
That, and it's also a lot less computationally challenging with the current technology. So they're migrating stuff now from using, say, like video cards to create these virtual neuron nets over to actual AI, hardware, kind of a similar thing, like an AI neural chip. And so as the technology progresses more and more, in fact, I think it was Raymond Kurzweil, who's the godfather of AI, said that by 2040, they should actually have a computer that has the level of human intelligence. And so they're going to capitalize on that for like these drug industries to be able to provide drugs that help people that have things like depression and things that are almost incurable with the current level of medicine that they have today. And the drugs like psilocybin or even cocaine or nicotine, they use what's called brain hacks. And so whenever they have a miracle drug like that, they want to figure out how it works, how they can be able to refine it to better target specific ailments.
A lot of study goes in behind this. You really, the thing is, these are coming from colleges too. You wouldn't expect where some of these studies come. They say they got to keep the drugs out of schools, but apparently they're really experimenting with them in classes.
Timothy Leary.
Oh my goodness! And this also, relative to what you were saying, it says here there's a possibility of really shifting in a relatively permanent way. So there's a possibility of really shifting in a relatively permanent way the functional organization of the brain. That's
Right.
what it says.
Right, and that's what I was talking about with the connectomes. And like I said again, thoughts that fire together wire together. That's kind of like a classical tenet of neurology. I don't know much about neurology aside from the whole AI stuff, but I did take a MIT class that was on YouTube on it. It's kind of like an introductory type of thing.
This day and age, YouTube is basically college. Eventually people are going to be graduating from the college of YouTube.
If you ever check out
now.
the Great Courses series, I love those courses, man. I've this crack.
To go on with the article, it says patients described life-changing insights that gave them lasting inspiration. Mary Beth Orr, 69, of Burien, Washington, said her psilocybin induced hallucinations, flying over breathtaking landscapes and merging telepathically with creative people throughout history.
I bet she
wasn't alone.
I bet she got those from Vashon Island.
Oh my gosh.
Washington State. Yeah, what? Oh, go ahead.
It says before enrolling in the study in 2018, Orr had 5 or 6 drinks every evening and more on weekends. The quantity was unacceptable, and yet I couldn't stop, she said. There was no off switch that I could access. During her first psilocybin experience, she saw a vision of her late father, who gave her a pair of eagle eyes and said, "Go." She told the therapist monitoring her, "These eagle eyes can't see God's face, but they know where it is." She stopped drinking entirely for 2 years and now has an occasional glass of wine. More than the talk therapy, she credits the psilocybin.
Yeah.
She says it had made alcohol irrelevant and uninteresting to me.
I can imagine.
I know, right? Like, what the fuck? What is alcohol? I am tethered to my children and my loved ones in a way that just precludes the desire to be alone with alcohol. Patients receiving psilocybin had more headaches, nausea, and anxiety than those getting the dummy drug. One person reported thoughts of suicide during the psilocybin session. In an experiment like this, it's important that patients don't know or guess if they got the psilocybin or the dummy drug. To try to achieve this, the researchers chose a generic antihistamine with some psychoactive effects as the placebo. Still,
I actually know a little bit about that too.
Oh, really?
Okay.
You can go ahead.
So where in your brain there's 3 what you would call psychic location centers. You have the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, and the medulla oblongata. And it creates kind of like a crossbar through the brain, the chakra system. So up in the area in the nose, kind of like where it's right between the sinus cavity and the brain, there's the area, I think it was the pituitary gland, and things
sounds about right to me.
I hope I get all these names right, but
you're doing way better than I am. I'm telling you that.
So basically, things like antihistamines actually stimulate that area, so you can actually take that and go into kind of like what's called a theta wave state, which is what they use for remote viewing, and people actually have reported having spiritual experiences during that time frame.
That is interesting. I mean,
yeah, actually,
I definitely understand. I only took one time in my life when I was younger. I took acid. That was it, once. And before that, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be great. It's gonna be great." And I took it once. It wasn't because I scared myself. It was because I learned just enough information during that time that I said, "You know what? I'm good. I don't need to know anymore." Because anymore, I would have had to sacrifice a lot. But those do and can help. They can also harm. We're not this podcast. I want to remind everyone right now, this podcast is not, saying, hey everyone, you guys need to go out there and, do shrooms and drugs. We're just talking about, what is the subject in this article, our experiences.
Right. I would also kind of like to add a warning too. This is something that I've heard of actually from listening to Jimmy Church's Fade to Black, and some of the people talking about the frat boys who kind of go down to South America and doing things like a lot of the drugs that the Mayans would use for like I think it was not DMT or whatever, or Yahe or whatever, like some of those drinks are, hallucinogenic drinks. Sometimes they go down and they will find a disreputable person, what they call a roadman, and they will put a drug called scopolamine in with the mix. Now, scopolamine is basically a date rape drug that basically turns you into a highly suggestible person, kind of like a zombie. And what happens is they will take advantage of the person. They won't remember anything. Not only that, but so when you have, say, like the Native American church, they have those like legitimate roadmen, spiritual roadmen, that watch the people and sit there with them while they're experiencing this, so they're not alone. And it's very important to remember, when you're doing powerful hallucinogenics like that, it needs to be in a safe environment, which means that it needs to be with a spiritual path, to be a holistic approach to medicine.
Definitely agree, and I thank you for that warning to all the listeners that are out there.
Yeah.
To continue on with the article here, we got a little bit more to go. Paul Mavis couldn't guess. The 61-year-old from Wilton, Connecticut, got the placebo, but still quite drinking. For one day, the talk therapy helped, suggesting to him that his emotional life stalled at the age of 15 when he started drinking to feel numb, and described a life-changing moment during a session where he was taking the dummy drug. Imagined the death of a loved one. Suddenly, an intense, incapacitating grief overcame him. He was crying, which isn't typical for me. I was sweating. I was bereft, he said, as I'm trying to reconcile this grief. Like, why am I feeling this? Instantly, I thought, drinking equals death. He hasn't had a drink since.
Right. So what he's kind of explaining is what's called an ego death experience. So in a lot of spiritual traditions, when people, with or without, hallucinogenics, it can happen. But basically, when people are going through the process of digging through the gunk of the subconscious mind, they will come to a point to where they will dawn on a realization, and that realization will create physical effects in the body, like nausea or vomiting. And they are purging those psychological blockages from the mind, which kind of results in like throwing up or, ego death experiences. It's a very powerful psychological experience.
I didn't know that. That's really interesting to know, ego death. Huh. Well, it says here, that also can be quite dangerous too, I guess, too. Yeah. And you could have its backfires. But this is Dr. Mark Willenbring, former director of treatment research at the National Institute for Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. More research is needed before psilocybin can be considered an effective addition to talk therapy. He noted that talking with a therapist helped both groups, those who got psilocybin and those who didn't. And the added benefit of psilocybin appeared to wear off over time. Tantalizingly absolute. It's tantalizing absolutely. I'm not quite sure that's correct, Kramer, but we're going to continue. It's tantalizing, absolutely, Willenbring said. Is more research required? Yes. Is it ready for prime time? No. Associated Press Health and Science Department receives support from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute Department of Science Education. The AE is solely responsible for all content. All right, yeah, that ends it right there. There you have it. Magic mushroom psychedelic may help heavy drinkers quit. It's up to debate. It's up in the air, but at least they're doing studies. And I've got to, of course, thank you, GQ, for coming on here as my unprofessional professional on this subject. Because I can't afford a real one, so I try to go down to the supermarket and see if anyone's standing outside that wants to give, a thought. Thank you.
Professional BSer.
Yeah, exactly. A professional BSer. But we try our best, don't we? Thank you, all of our listeners, for joining today at the Human Reaction. Tune in next time when we talk about another trending topic going on around the world.
Woot woot.